Hello and welcome to what is probably my first commentary in years, so sorry if things get a bit awkward at times, but on to the video. Today I want to take a look at the Leander, which I think is where the Royal Navy Cruiser line really starts getting actually pretty decent. Now this is a ship that I think on paper might seem rather weak compared to other tier 6 ships, and of course what a lot of people have been saying is that, well, the Fiji has 50% more firepower, so I mean, yeah, this can't be that good, right? Well, actually I think it has a lot of hidden things going for it that you might not notice at first. So first of all, let's look at the survivability. 28,700 points of HP. That's pretty bad for tier 6. It's the second worst, in fact, after the Nuremberg, which only has 27,000. However, since you do get the repair party, you can theoretically, assuming you have the premium consumable and superintendent, increase your HP by 16,000, or around about that. Not quite sure how the flag increases that, I'm not counting that right now. But you can get your HP up to a theoretical 44,000, or maybe a bit more even. Of course, you won't always be able to do that. If you get deleted, well, not much you can do with your repair party, but it is possible, and there are some other factors that can help you get the most out of these heals. And one of those things is armor. Now, if we take a look at the Emerald, at the armor layout, you'll see this thing has a massive citadel, and you do definitely feel that in-game. Goes from front to back, and yeah, it'll get hit all the time. Let's take a look at the Fiji. Yep, that's a pretty big citadel, front to back, below all the turrets, and so on. Edinburgh, same thing. It's basically the same thing for all cruisers, except the Leander. See this? Yep. The citadel isn't below the turrets, it's only below the smokestacks and a bit behind it. We take away the plating, yeah, you can see there's no hidden citadel in the middle like there would be on like the New Orleans. So that really helps you survive a lot of shots that you probably wouldn't in some of the other British cruisers. Now moving on to the guns. Yes, you do, well, you don't have as many as the Fiji, that's basically the point, and your range is rather low, but this ship does have some things to counter that, but more on that later. Next, the torpedoes. These might seem like a downgrade compared to the Emerald since you only have half as many, but you do get 2 kilometers of extra range. Now this 33% increase might not seem like much, but if you think about it like a circle surrounding your ship, you're actually covering around 77% more area with your torpedoes, and that means that there are a lot more targets that can enter this or be in this range. So these are torpedoes you get a lot more use out of if you're not just using them defensively to protect yourself in smoke, which is what they're okay for, but not as good as the Emerald. Funny thing is actually the Fiji only has 2x3 launchers, so you're actually getting a bit more firepower with those than you are in the Fiji, which I guess makes up a bit for the lack of guns. Well, AA, that's sort of a weak point of this ship. You basically do 40 damage at the different ranges, but it's still a pretty significant step up from the Emerald, which only has 3.5 kilometers base range and barely does any damage at that range. Of course, compared to the later ships, it can't really compete. So the AA might occasionally shoot down a plane. The range is decent, but it's pretty much the weak point of this ship. Maneuverability is similar to all the other ships in the line. You get around 32 knots. Turning circle radius is decent, and rudder shift time is nothing special either. But this is where this ship does find its speciality, concealment. 10 kilometers. Now I do have the camo to reduce the detection range, but I do not have concealment expert. Still, 10 kilometers, that's a lot lower than you'll find on any other tier 6 cruiser. In fact, the only ship that can really compete with it from the Royal Navy Cruiser line that you'll see quite often is the Belfast, since this has the 5th upgrade slot and can be 0.1 kilometers stealthier than Leander. But this is pretty much Belfast Concealment at tier 6, which helps a lot. So back to the gun range of 13.2 kilometers. Since you have 10 kilometer concealment, that means that you can easily get into positions where you can make good use of this short range. Now, this is a problem that I think something like the Atlanta struggles a bit with, since you really need concealment experts to even compete with this number, and then you don't have a smoke screen. This ship, you can get into a nice position, activate your smoke screen, and fire away despite having a lower range. So yeah, a lot of stats here that I think do actually make this quite a viable ship at tier 6, but let's see how it performs in battle. Let's have a gander at the Leander. So here we are, it's a tier 7 match on the map Two Brothers, a standard battle, and we have a good mix of tier 5 to 7 ships, so something you can pretty much expect to see with this kind of ship. Nothing too special for tier 6. Unfortunately, both teams do have 5 battleships, which isn't ideal for me as a British cruiser with AP only, since shooting at battleships it's incredibly situational and very dependent on the battleship, whether you do any significant damage or not. You'll see that later in this video. So the match has started. I take a look around to see which ships are where and decide where to go. To the right we have the Mediocre, to the left are British cruisers, and Nicholas of Fugataka, and, well, look at the map. Everyone's turning towards the right side, and that's pretty bad for a standard battle, because if you leave one side undefended, the enemy team will just be able to push through with literally no resistance, while you struggle on the side that your team is on and have to eventually turn around to defend your base. So I tell my team to go left. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of well, the way I thought of it is that the left side of the map, not turn left, but of course these are random people, they don't know how I think, so it's a bit of a mistake on my part. I realized that and correct myself, but at this point there are a lot of ships on the other side and not so many on this side. So, I mean, I have to defend this side at this point, since otherwise there would be hardly anyone here. Looks like I'll be getting a Fugataka and Bayan as backup here. Maybe then Nicholas, but he's heading towards the middle. And, well, that's not that good, because going through the middle on Two Brothers, especially at the start of the match, I mean, later on it's actually not that bad, but that's a pretty terrible idea. Everyone's going to shoot at you when you get out of the other side. Well, I continue on towards the side of the map. Don't go full speed, since we don't want to be too aggressive on the side. We are only 3 ships at the moment, and there's just no way we'd be able to get a good attack if we push too far at this point. So I stay close to these islands, and this is actually where I'd like to show you an interesting trick with these British cruisers. So you only have 7 seconds where you're going to be laying down smoke with these smoke screens. So you have to slow down before you can actually use them, otherwise you'll just glide out of your smoke. So one trick that you can do is, if you expect to be detected at any moment, you can just drive half speed. That way you don't have to actually wait to slow down before you can activate your smoke screen. So you can see I'm going half speed, I'm detected, there's a Mediocre. I don't activate my smoke screen just yet. Fire off some torpedoes, expecting him to turn a bit eventually, so a bit behind the friction line, and there's a York as well. At this point, that's too much firepower, and there are the first shots going at me, so I activate my smoke screen. I also activate my hydro, since this is a Mediocre, it's bound to shoot torpedoes in my direction. That's what Mediocres do. Now I can see my damage. I'm already at 9,000, 2 citadel hits, since this Mediocre was just going broadside. And he continues going broadside. There's another 2 citadel hits, 18,000 damage. Another citadel hit. And another citadel hit. So at this point I'm at around 25,000 damage, and that was just in a matter of 30 seconds because this guy kind of screwed up. Now I'm not sure why this Mediocre was slowing down at this point, but in hindsight, looking at it now, I think he just disconnected Maybe it was a rage quit or just bad luck. You can see his turrets are going into the default position, he's slowing down. But I didn't really realize this at the time, and this is kind of getting a bit frustrating since my shells are just not doing any damage to him right now for some reason. 700 health, surely this salvo can take him out. Nope. And my smoke is only active for another 20 to 25 seconds or so. So I slowly have to prepare myself to get out of here. Now, if you're going to use your smoke offensively, it's generally a good idea to have an exit plan. Now, I'm preparing to turn a bit, accelerate before the smoke screen ends, and run behind this rock behind me. Fire off some torpedoes just as the smoke is about to disappear. And keep shooting this broadside Kirov since he has pretty much no armor and is easy to citadel. Now the Mayhem shows up. Since the Kirov is running away, he's not really a threat, and focusing on him wouldn't really help that much, so I switched target to the Mayhem. He's shooting back at me, but misses. I get not that great hit on him, but my next shots will be a bit better eventually. I said eventually, okay, one more hit. 1000 damage from one hit, that's pretty good. Bayern shot at me, but he only clipped the front end of my ship where there's no real citadel and got an over penetration. And look, 2 torpedo hits on the Bayern from those torpedoes earlier. So, talking about torpedoes, it's generally, I think, a good idea to make use of them whenever you can. If you expect to absolutely need your torpedoes, say someone's charging your smoke, or is about to charge your smoke, then save them for that. But if you don't see any real use for them, just feel free to spam them at any targets that could enter their range. I was firing those torpedoes earlier at the Bayern, I think, but the Mayhem decided to turn into them and he's dead. So I smoke up at this point since there's a Dunkirk, a Bayern, a Kirov, and well, the York's behind the island, but still that's 2 battleships that could shoot at me, and I don't really want to get shot out since the Royal Navy Cruisers in the open, they don't do so well. That's kind of why they have the smoke screen. The Leander's better than most, but it's not great. At this point I only really have this Bayern or the Dunkirk to shoot at, but the Bayern's closer, so I choose him. Which is a bit unfortunate because you can see the Bayern is a ship that you can't really do significant damage to in the Leander. I think there's generally a problem with the low-tier German battleships, they just don't have enough superstructure. So I switched to the York now that the island is not quite as much in the way, but it's not really an optimal shot. See this Kirov is broadside over here, so I switched to him. And this is a good example of where it's a good idea to be in a place where you have a lot of targets to shoot at. That way you'll pretty much always find someone who's screwing up and driving broadside to you, or sailing broadside to you. So this Kirov, despite pretty bad dispersion actually right now, yeah, he's just going to die if he keeps going like this. 2000 damage there. I think I'm about to get another citadel. Yeah, no, I guess there was not in that server, but this. Okay, it's the next server then. Yep, there's another citadel. He's pretty much dead, and there he goes. But my smoke is about to run out, so I have to go now. And well, the Bayern is right around the island, 5.5 kilometer range. It's pretty hard to miss torps at this range, although I would have expected him to do a bit better job of dodging than he actually does. I switch targets to York since I can't actually do damage to him, and angle myself away from the Bayern to minimize any damage I could get from him. This York, however, is at 7.2 kilometer range, and while the York's AP isn't the best, especially for a German cruiser, at this kind of range it can do some serious damage to you. And look, the Bayern just went into my torpedoes. So here comes some AP from the York, and that's quite a hit. That was like probably 4,000 to 8,000 damage. And well, I'm kind of on my own at this point. Between 2 Dunkirks and a York, this is less than ideal. British cruisers on their own, well, now they're really easy to counter, since this York just has to drive towards me, and that would pretty much minimize any damage I could do to him. He doesn't do that just yet, and at this point I activate my smoke screen because it's pretty much the only thing that can save me, at least temporarily. I asked my team to come back in a minute and first try and fire off some shots, but here you can see the York's angled. I get like, well, that one just missed, but I think I'd only get like 500 damage hits on him this way. So yeah, I asked my team to come back because I really need someone to spot for me. That's kind of an issue with these cruisers. If you're in a smoke screen and there's no one there to help you, all you have to spot for you is your hydroacoustic search. And that only has a range of like 4.5 kilometers, so it's not going to be that useful for spotting. Just York's still charging me. I was expecting him to maybe torpedo my smoke, just to get me out of the smoke, because, well, he might not be able to hit the Royal Navy cruisers that are in smoke if they're using Hydra. You will at least get them outside of the smoke in the open, and in the open, these cruisers can't really compete with most of the other ships. Now, one of the advantages of these ships is, of course, that you can fire off your torpedoes manually. So you can see there, I had a really tight spread that he just couldn't dodge, and he's also sunk. So at this point, you can see I've done 150,000 damage, got 4 kills, and, well, I kind of won my Kraken at this point, so I do get a bit greedy. There's 2 Dunkirks over here, both are in torpedo range. Fire off some shots. I was trying to reverse there to get be able to fire those torpedoes off, but I couldn't turn quite far enough, so I accelerate away. Now, I wouldn't actually recommend firing torpedoes like this, since there is this Fiji over there that's kind of charging into them. I was expecting him to maybe turn away eventually, but he doesn't. So I warn him just that he can do maneuvers that might at least dodge those torpedoes, but it actually doesn't turn out to be necessary. I fired those torpedoes a bit too far back to actually hit those 2 battleships. Now they're still going broadside to me. The Fiji launched his torpedoes, got a hit on 1 Dunkirk, the other one rams him. I guess, I'm not sure if the Fiji already used his torpedoes on that side, but in any case, I don't think the Dunkirk wanted any more torpedoes near him. Now, I fire my torpedoes at this Dunkirk. I wasn't expecting him to actually turn, because there are like 3 or 4 ships in front of him, and while angling towards the Royal Navy cruiser might counter it in terms of receiving damage from it, it's still just a cruiser. You don't want to angle towards it instead of a battleship, and there is kind of more than 1 battleship towards its broadside now. I activate my smoke screen as kind of a panic smoke. He keeps aiming at where he thinks I would have stood when he was going to proximity spot me, but since I knew this, I immediately accelerated out of the smoke screen and he wasn't aiming at me. He probably didn't actually have his guns reloaded, so it was kind of a waste here. And I head towards the channel between the islands, since I still want my Kraken. It's so close, yet so far. I'm not expecting to actually survive this charge. I'm just trying to get my torpedoes off on that König. And, well, you'll see how that goes. So, my whole team's there firing at the König, who actually managed to beach himself and is currently reversing out of there. I was expecting him to only reverse for a little bit and eventually accelerate again to well, not be going backwards at a really slow pace, but he actually keeps on going backwards, so since I shot most of my torpedoes either at the prediction line or in front of it, most of them end up missing, which is unfortunate since it means that I actually won't be able to get my Kraken despite 2 of these torpedoes hitting him. Not quite enough damage. He is flooding though, and I do ask my team to perhaps let him flood to death, but it's too late and you can't really expect them to do that. So the game's over. Did do 190,000 damage there, which is actually the global record for this ship right now. And yeah, 8 torpedo hits, 9 citadels. It's a pretty good game. 2,646 base XP. And here's some interesting things. Look at this. 3,400 damage with secondaries. 42,000 damage taken. So that's just there to demonstrate that while you only have 28,700 HP, that 28,700 can become a much larger number pretty quickly. So I hope you guys enjoyed this commentary. Please let me know what you thought of it. I mean, this was my first commentary in ages, so any feedback would be very much appreciated, and I hope you guys enjoyed.